My name is Bruno Oliveira and I work in the Play Games team. Today we're here to talk about two of my favorite things, which are the Play Games API and the NDK, and how to use those two to make a game. So when you're writing a game using the Play Games API, you normally have to worry about connecting all these callbacks that the Android lifecycle gives you. So you have onCreate, you have onStart, you have onStop, onActivityResult, and several other callbacks. Normally, if you're writing a game that's not native, you can usually get away with just subclassing base game activity, which is a class that we have in the samples. When you subclass base game activity, all that lifecycle is connected for you. Now, of course, if you're writing a native game, as you know, you can't subclass base game activity. Why? Because you have to use native activity for a native game. So we're going to talk about how to set up native activity to do exactly that. So first of all, you don't have to use native activity as it is. You can actually subclass it. So this is what we do here. So before anything, we start with base game, with actually native activity, and then we derive our activity class from it. So in this case, our game is called Awesome Game. So we are deriving Awesome Game activity from base game, from native activity. Since we're going to use the game helper, which is also in the samples, we also implement GameHelper.GameHelperListener, which is the listener class that GameHelper uses. So next we declare GameHelper inside of our activity, and we're going to have to manage its lifecycle. Remember, this is actually done by base game activity, but it's not actually very hard to do it yourself. To do this, all you have to do, first of all, you want to load your game library because it's an NDK game, so we're loading the game library using system.loadLibrary. Next, we want to hook up the game helper. To do this, for example, when you have onCreate, so first of all, you create your game helper here, and then what you have to do is call game helper, like mhelper.setup, and this is when you do the setup for the game helper. Here we're specifying that we want the games client, and we also want the app state client, and we're going to use those in our game. After you do onCreate, all you have to do is do the same on onStart. So whenever you get the onStart callback, the game helper needs to know that the onStart has happened. So this is how you hook it up. On onStop, it's pretty much the same thing. So on onStop, you just call mhelper.onStop, and that connects it correctly. Next, you also need on activity result. You do just the same thing. You just call mhelper to notify that the result has come in, because that's necessary for the whole sign-in process with the dialogues and so on. So you need to get the results to the helper. Next, you have to wait for the sign-in callback. So you're going to be notified that sign-in succeeded or failed through the sign-in callbacks, like on sign-in succeeded and on sign-in failed. So that's when you probably want to notify your native code that the sign-in has succeeded or failed. So next, let's talk about how to actually do sign-in. So first of all, we're not going to talk into great length about the JNI, but you have to initialize the JNI. So first of all, you can do that using attach current thread, and then you have a working attachment to the thread that you can use to make JNI calls. Of course, don't forget, because I made that mistake, don't forget to detach the current thread, otherwise we're going to get strange crashes in the background. After you're done setting up the JNI, you're probably going to want to have a sign-in button somewhere in your game. So the sign-in button pretty much looks like that. You have some liberty to customize it, but when the player clicks on it, you should start the sign-in flow. So the sign-in flow is the whole set of dialogues that the player has to click through to actually authorize your game to access the Play Games API. So when the user clicks that, what you want to call, this is in Java, of course, you want to call mhelper.begin user-initiated sign-in. So that's going to begin the whole sign-in flow. However, since you're going to be calling it from the game thread, so remember that the game is going to be running on a separate thread, it's not the UI thread. So you need to wrap that with a run on a UI thread call, so that you can actually call that method from the game thread and have it execute on the UI thread. So this is why we have this method, which is called post-start sign-in, which essentially can be called from any thread and post to the UI thread. And there we call mhelper.begin user-initiated sign-in. Now let's show how to actually start the flow from C++. So nobody's afraid of JNI, right? So this is how we invoke that method using JNI. It's just standard JNI. You just get the activity object, the activity class, and then we get the method ID for our method, and then invoke it. Notice that when we do that, when we do this, we actually sidestep one of the major difficulties of using JNI in Android, which is that if you just try to find a class by name, it's not going to find it, because you can only find the actual framework classes using find class, unless you do funny stuff with class loaders. So notice that we are completely sidestepping this whole difficulty by just using our own activity as a starting point. So we're using our own activity and calling a method that we wrote. After we call this, then we get the sign-in flow. All right, so after you do the sign-in flow, you have to know when you're actually signed in so that your game can respond to that appropriately. you're going to know that when on the Java side you get this on sign in succeeded callback. So that's the callback that tells you that sign in has succeeded, or else that the sign in has failed. So how do you actually notify the code? You can, to notify the native code that this has happened, what you're usually going to have to do is to write the native method that the Java side can call and then notify your native code that this happened. One of the ways to do this, I think it's a pretty useful pattern, is not to have just a Boolean saying yes or no. Is actually to have a three-state variable saying it's either sign in has failed, sign in has succeeded, or sign in is in progress. And then from native code, you can react appropriately to those states. So we're declaring these states as constants here, and then we're also declaring a native method from Java, which is report sign-in result. So we're going to call that method whenever we want to report a sign-in result or progress to native code. So this is how we do this. So when we are on start, we say that sign-in is in progress. Why? Because every time your application gets an on start, like comes back from the background or anything like that, sign-in is not ready yet. So sign-in is in progress because the Play Games API has to reconnect. It's only when you get on sign-in succeeded after on start that you can actually start to make calls. So whenever you get on start, this is when you report to native code that the sign-in is currently in progress. Then, of course, when you get on stop, it's the same thing. You also say that sign-in is in progress, even though it had succeeded before. Why? Because when you get on stop, sign-in is no longer working, and it's in progress because it's going to come back later. Then when you get on sign-in, when you start the sign-in process using post-start sign-in, which is the method that we just showed, you also say that it's in progress because, well, the UI flow is happening right now, and at the end of it, you're going to get on sign-in succeeded or failed. Next, of course, when you get on sign-in succeeded, that's when you report that the sign-in state is success. When you get on sign-in failed, you report that sign-in was a failure, and then your native code is going to have to know how to handle those states. So next, how do you actually handle that from native code? It's just a JNI native method. So all you have to do is write that method signature that you can generate with Java H. And then when that method gets called, all you have to do is react to that. One caveat is that you're going to be running on the UI thread on that method. So be careful not to try to manipulate your game state and so on in a way that may clash with your game thread. So usually one of the useful methods there is just to use some sort of synchronization or write to a write once variable or something like that. But it's important to notice that it's going to be on the UI thread, so don't do anything funny there. All right, so that's pretty much all there is for this first episode. And please watch the other ones because then we're going to go more in depth into achievements, leaderboards, and to how we can actually do this on a deeper level. Thank you very much.